Love can defy distance, judgment, and even the cruelty of fate, but what happens when it collides with the bond of blood? Toan and Diem dared to dream of a new life together, free from whispers and his mother's disapproval. Yet just as they prepared to leave, a devastating call shattered everything. Toan's mother was dying. Torn between love and duty, he was forced into the most painful choice of his life. Will their love survive this trial? Subscribe now and follow this gripping story of sacrifice, loyalty, and the fight for true happiness. The days at the farm passed slowly, like pages of an old book that smelled faintly of earth and sunlight. Toan had never known peace like this before. Each morning, when the first golden light of dawn spilled across the fields, he would wake to the sound of roosters crowing, the rustle of leaves, and the soft hum of Diem's voice as she tended to the animals. She had a way of making even the most ordinary moments glow with meaning. The way she tucked loose strands of hair behind her ear while feeding the chickens, or how she laughed, soft and unguarded, when the calves nudged her hand, filled Toan's heart with something he could not describe, something larger than life itself. Love, he realized, was not always grand gestures or glittering promises. Sometimes it was in the quiet rhythm of shared mornings, in the comfort of simply being side by side. Yet behind this serene picture lingered a storm he could no longer ignore. Every letter from home, every whispered rumor from the villagers, carried the weight of disapproval. His mother's voice echoed constantly in his mind, sharp, unyielding, demanding that he return and abandon this foolish life with Diem. And worse still, the village tongues wagged mercilessly, calling Diem a usurper, a woman who had bewitched the son of a wealthy family into throwing everything away. Toan saw the way Diem lowered her eyes whenever they passed through the market, pretending not to hear the cruel whispers. He noticed the forced smile she wore at dinner, trying to convince him, and maybe herself, that none of it mattered. But it mattered to him. Each word was like a thorn sinking deeper into his flesh. One evening, after a long day of labor, Toan found Diem sitting by the wooden fence, her face tilted toward the horizon where the sun was slowly drowning in waves of crimson and gold. Her expression was quiet, almost fragile, as though she carried a secret sorrow she dared not speak. He walked toward her, his chest tightening with the unbearable thought that perhaps she might one day slip away, tired of fighting battles that were never hers to begin with. Kneeling beside her, he took her hand into his rough, calloused palms, feeling how small and delicate she was compared to the strength of his grip. "Diem," he said softly, his voice trembling with both fear and resolve, "I can't watch you suffer like this anymore. I can't let them poison our lives." His eyes searched hers, desperate to be understood. "We don't belong to their judgments. We don't belong to their cruelty. If staying here means losing you piece by piece, then I'd rather give it all up." She blinked, startled, her lips parting as though she wanted to protest, but the intensity in his gaze silenced her. For the first time, she saw not just the man she had fallen in love with, but someone willing to tear down every wall, abandon every comfort, and choose her above all else. "Toan," she whispered, her voice barely audible, trembling with the weight of disbelief. He tightened his hold on her hand, his words pouring out like a vow. "Let's leave this place. Let's go somewhere far away where no one can touch us, no one can curse us, no one can try to rip us apart. I don't care about the house, the money, or even my family's approval. You are my home now. Where you are, that's where my life begins." The sky above them deepened into shades of violet, stars trembling faintly in the darkening canvas. In that fleeting moment, surrounded by the quiet breath of the earth, Toan felt a surge of freedom unlike anything he had ever known. And as Diem looked back at him, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears, he knew that the choice had already been made. They would leave. They would build a world of their own, even if it meant burning every bridge behind them. They had almost finished packing. The small wooden chest that once sat in the corner of Diem's modest room was now filled with their clothes, a few photographs, and a bundle of seeds she insisted on taking, seeds she said would remind them that life could begin again, no matter the soil. Toan had arranged for a cart at dawn. They would leave before the village woke, slipping away like shadows into the unknown. The thought of it both terrified and exhilarated him. He had imagined the freedom of walking beside Diem through towns where no one knew their names, starting anew without whispers, without shame, without his mother's piercing eyes burning holes in his resolve. But fate, cruel and unpredictable, had other plans. That night, as Toan folded the last of his shirts into the trunk, the shrill ring of his phone shattered the fragile cocoon of their hope. He hesitated before answering, a strange weight settling in his chest. The voice on the other end was panicked, his cousin, breathless, words tumbling out in fragments. His mother had collapsed. The doctors feared the worst. Her heart was weak, her condition critical, and no one knew if she would survive the night. The room seemed to tilt. Toan's hand trembled as the phone slipped from his ear, clattering onto the wooden floorboards. His breath caught in his throat, a knot tightening until he could barely inhale. He had dreamed of leaving for so long, had finally gathered the courage to cast off the chains of expectation, but in that instant, every thought of escape dissolved into raw, suffocating fear. Diem rushed to him, her face pale, her hands grasping his arms. "What is it?" she asked, though the dread in her voice suggested she already knew it wasn't good news. "My mother," Toan managed to whisper, the words tasting bitter on his tongue. She's dying." Silence fell heavy between them, broken only by the chirping of crickets outside and the faint creak of the house settling into the night. Diem's lips parted, then closed again, as though she were searching for words that could comfort him but finding none. She had seen the way he wrestled with his mother's disapproval, the way it wounded him even when he pretended otherwise. And now, when he was so close to choosing freedom, destiny demanded that he return. Her own chest ached, not just for him but for herself too. She had braced her heart for cruelty from the villagers, for rejection, for endless loneliness, but she had not prepared for this. Not for the possibility that she might be the reason he hesitated at his mother's deathbed. She could not bear to imagine Toan looking at her years later with regret, haunted by the thought that he had abandoned his mother in her final moments because of her. Taking a shaky breath, Diem cupped his face in her hands, forcing him to look at her. Her eyes glistened, though her voice carried a quiet strength. "Toan, you can't leave now. Not like this." He shook his head, torn between defiance and despair. "But we were ready. We were finally going to be free. If I go back now, she'll never let me go. She'll chain me to that house until the end of my days." His words cracked, his voice breaking with the weight of hopelessness. Diem pressed her forehead to his, her tears dampening his cheek. "Listen to me. Freedom means nothing if it comes with a lifetime of guilt. If you walk away from her now, that wound will never heal. And I don't want to be the reason you hate yourself someday." Her whisper carried the force of truth he could not deny. Toan felt the air leave his lungs, his body trembling under the enormity of the choice before him. He wanted to scream, to rage at the injustice of it all. Why must every path toward happiness demand such unbearable sacrifice? Yet as he gazed into Diem's tearful eyes, he knew she was right. Leaving now would not be liberation, but betrayal. The packed chest sat forgotten in the corner, the seeds of a new life waiting in vain. And in that moment, Toan understood that dawn would not carry them into freedom as he had planned. Instead, it would drag him back to the place he had tried so desperately to escape. The following morning dawned gray, the sky heavy with clouds as though it, too, carried the weight of Toan's heart. He had not slept a moment, his mind spiraling between duty and desire. When the first rays of light pierced the horizon, he stood by the doorway of the farmhouse, staring at the cart that was meant to take him and Diem away. The trunk still sat inside, the seeds nestled safely within, silent reminders of a dream deferred. Diem lingered behind him, her hands folded tightly together, her face pale but calm, as if she had already resigned herself to what had to be done. "Toan," she whispered, her voice fragile yet steady, "you know where you must go." He turned to her. His eyes red from sleeplessness, his body taut with conflict. "If I leave you here, will you wait for me?" The question tore from his lips like a plea, a boy's desperate cry beneath the man's hardened shell, her lips curved in the faintest, saddest smile. She stepped closer, pressing a hand to his chest where his heart thundered in chaotic rhythm. "I have waited through worse. I will wait again. But go to her, Toan. She is your mother. You can't lose her this way." The words struck him with painful clarity. Diem, the woman who had suffered the most, who had been maligned and rejected, was the one urging him to do what was right, even though it meant delaying her own happiness. That selflessness was more powerful than any declaration of love, more binding than any vow. He caught her hands and kissed them, his tears soaking into her skin. "I will come back," he swore hoarsely. "No matter what they say, no matter what chains they try to put on me, I will find my way back to you." And with that, he ran. The road stretched long and uneven, his feet pounding against the earth as though distance itself was an enemy he had to conquer. By the time he reached the hospital, his lungs burned, and his chest felt like it would split apart. But the fear of being too late pushed him onward. The sterile white corridors, the stench of antiseptic, the hushed murmurs of nurses, all blurred together until he stood before a door where his mother lay. Inside, she looked smaller than he remembered, swallowed by the sheets, her once commanding presence diminished to frailty. Tubes and machines whispered their mechanical lullabies, keeping her tethered to life. Toan froze, unable to move. Guilt and love crashing through him in waves. He remembered every harsh word she had spoken, every demand, every attempt to separate him from Diem. And yet, seeing her so fragile, he realized how deep her absence would cut if she were gone. He sank to his knees beside her bed, taking her withered hand into his. "Mother," he choked out, his voice breaking. "I'm here. I should have been here sooner." His tears spilled freely, unguarded, carving hot trails down his face. Her eyelids fluttered, heavy, but slowly she opened her eyes. They were clouded with pain but softened in recognition. Her lips trembled as though to speak, but only a whisper escaped, fragile as dust. "My son." The words shattered him. All his anger, all his defiance, melted in that moment. Beneath every command, every wall she had built, there had always been love, a love twisted by fear of losing him, by pride, by expectations. And now, at the edge of life, she revealed the truth in the simplest, most human way. Outside the hospital, Diem stood by the gate, unwilling to intrude but unable to leave. She clutched the strap of her bag tightly, her knuckles white, watching the windows for any sign of Toan. Her heart ached with both fear and hope. She knew their path would not be easy. If his mother survived, there would be more battles, more accusations, more nights of loneliness. But as the clouds broke and a single shaft of sunlight cut through the gray, Diem whispered to herself, steady as a prayer, "We'll endure. Love will endure." And somewhere inside that sterile room, Toan believed the same.